This story starts in a shady operating theater, where two shady surgeons are running experiments on two living people who seem utterly injured. The surgeons inject both test subjects with a strange green liquid. Soon enough, the male test subject begins to suffer, with blood pouring out from every orifice. Eventually, whatever the surgeons injected into the poor guy proves too much to handle, and both test subjects supposedly die right there. One surgeon finally decides to give up on their research, realizing that after sacrificing so many people, all that awaited them was one failure after another. He knows from the start that this research had no real future. Before leaving, he makes it abundantly clear that he won't be part of it anymore. Dr. Shin seems to be the only person who doesn't believe their efforts have been futile. As far as he's concerned, the people they used for the tests were always supposed to die in a day or two. So it doesn't matter if they ended up dying a day early, as they contributed to the greater good of humanity. Shin then instructs his junior to leave the operating theater, as he plans to take care of the bodies himself. The junior doesn't say another word and leaves quietly. Shin, meanwhile, is still fixated on the belief that this research will eventually succeed. He's certain the only thing holding it back is the lack of proper test subjects. He knows without a doubt that the right subject for this experiment is still out there. Now let's cut to the main hero of this story. His name is Kang Yi-won, and his friend is Jinmin Hyung. These two work at a funeral home, taking care of dead bodies. After goofing around and eating, they decide to head to the hospital to claim the bodies. Once they arrive in the hospital, Yuan shows his business card to the attendant at the counter and introduces himself as Kang Yuan from Hanwol Funeral Services. He had received a call about patients who passed away early that morning. His friend, Hyung, also joins him after stepping away for a quick bathroom break. Soon enough, they find themselves in the operating theater. The bodies they are there to claim just happen to be the same ones the surgeons were using for their experiments. Hyung confirms that the victims appear to be a father and daughter. The report states they died in a car accident. But one thing doesn't make sense to Yi-hwan. While the father's body is in bad shape, the girl's body is almost spotless. Aside from a wound on her arm, there are no signs of any surgeries performed. His friend reminds him they're not forensic experts, so they should stop worrying about things they shouldn't and focus on claiming the bodies. Yuan decides to take a look inside the girl's mouth. As he's doing so, he suddenly cuts his finger on her broken tooth. Anyhow, the next step is to move the bodies. As they start moving the father's body first, Yi-hwan suddenly notices that the wound on the girl's hand has disappeared. Of course, this shocks him like nothing else. He points out the healed wound to his friend, but before they can discuss it further, Yi-hwan is struck by a sharp, stinging pain that causes him to collapse. His friend grows worried and rushes over to support him. Meanwhile, Yi-hwan's condition only worsens. He's suddenly hit with immense and unbearable pain that makes him scream at the top of his lungs. It seems some infection has entered his bloodstream through the cut from the girl's broken tooth. His heart feels like it's going to explode, and his entire body is so hot that it feels like he's being burned alive. He can sense he's dying if this pain keeps up. Eventually, he loses consciousness, leaving his worried friend crying like a child. Meanwhile, the girl begins to twitch and move. A while later, Yi-hwan opens his eyes. He has no idea what's going on. He notices the so-called dead girl banging her head against the door. Naturally, Yi-hwan is terrified to see the dead girl on her feet. As if that's not horrifying enough, he notices his friend's mangled, bloody body on the ground. Yi-hwan recoils in fear, panic seizing his heart and mind. For some reason, his hands are covered in blood as well. He then notices the girl looking at him, and they lock eyes for a moment. But she just twirls around and continues her creepy head banging. After staring at his friend's dead body, Yi-hwan looks back at his blood-stained hands. The sweet aroma of the blood filling the room is oddly enticing. The overwhelming stench of blood fills his nostrils, spreading across his tongue. The scene before him feels twisted and surreal. Suddenly, Yi-hwan notices his supposed dead friend groaning. Seeing this, he makes a desperate effort to wake him up, but there's no response. His friend seems to be deep in unconsciousness. Yi-hwan decides to take him with him, believing he might survive if he gets him the treatment he needs. It looks like the entire hospital is in shambles. Everywhere is stained with blood, and there's no one in sight. We then see only an old man crying in the corner while a girl lies dead nearby. The old man's face is glistening with sweat from the tension consuming his mind. He's sure that no one is coming to save them, which means the world outside this hospital is beyond saving now. He curses whoever might have caused this madness. Suddenly, he notices the secretary flinching, so he starts running out of the room, certain that if he stays, he'll die an unwanted death. Grabbing a golf club, he steels himself and ventures out of the room to leave the hospital for good. We cut back to the operating room. Yuan has finished putting his friend on a stretcher and is ready to take him to get treated. But Yuan feels weak and sluggish. His stomach hurts, as if his insides are twisting. The pain feels similar to the sensation of starvation. But this doesn't make sense. He had literally eaten lunch before coming to the hospital, so it hasn't been that long since he had his last meal. However, we all know that the starvation he's feeling isn't for food, it's probably for blood. Regardless, he steels himself and starts pushing his friend's stretcher. As he opens the door and steps outside, he comes across the scared old man holding a golf club. The old man is a blessing for Yihwan. He quickly shouts for help, asking the doctor to treat his injured friend. Just then, that head-banging zombie girl zips past Yihwan and runs straight toward the old man like a hungry and bloodthirsty monster. As the old man recoils in fear, more zombies emerge from another room and begin feasting on him. Yihwan can do nothing but tremble as he stands there, witnessing this horrific scene. His friend, whom he was trying to rescue, stands up on his own feet. He walks toward the other zombies who are happily devouring the old man. When he reaches them, he sits down and sinks his teeth into the old man's head, joining the gruesome, macabre feast. Yihwan doesn't waste a second and hides behind the wall. He reflects on how his once goofy friend has now become this brainless zombie. For a moment, Yihwan thinks he must be dreaming, because whatever is happening could not be real. He closes his eyes and concentrates, trying to wake up from this nightmare. But no luck, because it's certainly not a dream. He then notices that it's the 29th of April, even though it's supposed to be the 24th. If he's understanding this correctly, he lost consciousness for 5 whole days. He quickly reaches for his phone and confirms that it's indeed the 29th of April. His phone is filled with missed calls and unread text messages from his sister, Nuna. In the messages, she expresses concern about his well-being and pleads with him not to go outside, begging him to stay alive. Soon enough, his phone dies. While Yihwan has no idea what's going on, that's not an excuse for him to sit there and do nothing. If he wants to save Nuna and Minhee, he has to leave the hospital at all costs. In some random convenience store, we see a girl crying in a quiet corner of the store. The area outside is infested with mindless zombies, hungry for blood, so all she can do is pray for a savior to come. We cut back to Yihwan, who sprints down the hospital corridor and then the stairs. As he's descending, he locks eyes with that head-banging zombie girl. But eventually, he descends down and gets out of the hospital building. He's exhausted, and the hunger is finally overwhelming him. While he doesn't have time to stop and eat, he can't help it, because after being knocked out for several days, it's natural he's feeling hungry. He's so hungry that he might collapse, so he decides to find food first. As he scans the area, he spots a convenience store and without a second thought, enters the abandoned store. He starts devouring burgers and soda like there's no tomorrow. After finishing his meal, he finally feels satisfied. But then, he notices something strange about himself. It's odd that he didn't even stop to consider whether the food he was eating was spoiled. Furthermore, he usually hated convenience store food, so it's unusual for him to be eating it. His eyes suddenly fill with tears as he remembers his friend, who has now turned into a literal zombie. He recalls how his friend had always been curious about the existence of zombies, but now the poor guy has become one himself. As Yuan is drowning in sorrow over the loss of his friend, he suddenly notices commotion coming from a nearby storage room. He cautiously approaches the room and enters carefully. Inside, he sees the very girl we've seen in previous cuts. She cries out loudly, thinking a zombie is creeping up on her. Totally overwhelmed with fear and panic, she finally dares to look back, only to find Yihwan forcing a smile on his face as he offers to help. Meanwhile, a zombie outside is making its way toward the convenience store. Inside, Yihwan gathers some edible items and offers them to the hungry girl, who devours the food like there's no tomorrow. Seeing how fast she's eating, Yihwan suggests she slow down, warning that she might upset her stomach. The girl, finally feeling satisfied after eating and drinking some water, thanks him and says she feels much better. Out of sheer curiosity, she asks him how he managed to get inside, which catches him off guard. He explains that he was so hungry he thought he needed to eat something, so he rushed into the convenience store. Of course, his explanation doesn't seem very convincing, especially considering how the place outside is overrun with mindless zombies. Suddenly, Yihwan asks if he can find anything to charge his phone. She reminds him about some power banks in the store. Yihwan decides to go get them and be on his way, but the girl begs him not to open the door because there are zombies outside. But Yihwan reassures her that there were no zombies when he came in. But just as if summoned by fate, a zombie appears outside as soon as our boy opens the door. And once the zombie spots the human girl, it goes absolutely nuts with urges, charging toward her at full speed. However, since Yuan is standing between them, he shoves the monster away. He unintentionally shoves it so hard that the zombie flies through the air like a lightweight trash bag and skids across the floor. What Yuan thought was a simple push turned out to be a deadly counterattack. The girl behind him is stunned by such power, while Yihwan is equally bewildered, having no idea where all this strength came from. The zombie that took the brunt of the attack is down for the count, and as the scene pans out, we realize just how powerful and messed up that push was. The zombie literally went through a glass window and was thrown about 15 feet away. Yihwan claims he definitely pushed the zombie with all his strength, but he didn't expect to knock it out like that. That's when he notices another curious detail. Throughout all his time running around, there hasn't been a single zombie that tried to attack him. The girl then questions him about the secret behind his immense strength. Interestingly, she calls him ajushi, a term in Korean used to address middle-aged men, which Yihwan definitely doesn't like. He doesn't want to be considered a creepy middle-aged man. Anyway, he remembers that he was supposed to grab a power bank, so he heads to the general goods section. Later, after charging his phone, he calls his sister, Nuna. But there's no response from her, which fills him with immense terror. He doesn't want to entertain the possibility that he might be too late to save her now. The image of Minhee and Nuna flashes before his eyes, and he feels tears well up. But he suddenly snaps out of these gloomy thoughts as he can't be sure of anything yet. It's possible that her phone just died and that she's hiding somewhere, waiting for help to arrive. So once again, he steels himself and decides to venture outside to find them. But before he can leave, he needs to figure out something with the girl in the convenience store. He asks her if she has a phone. She says yes, but it's dead. Yihwan promptly offers her a power bank and suggests she call her parents. A while later, she manages to connect with her mother, and tears fill her eyes as she speaks. She quickly reassures her mother about her well-being and current whereabouts. Her mother, relieved, is happy to know she's alive. The daughter also makes sure to attribute her well-being to the efforts of this ajushi who helped her. Once again, Yihwan is annoyed at being considered a creepy middle-aged man. Since he's only 28 years old, it feels unfair to be called that. Suddenly, the girl's mother warns her not to come back home, and with that, her mother hangs up on her, leaving the poor, concerned daughter in tears and sorrow. After the call, the girl continues to cry and sob uncontrollably. Seeing how desperate and helpless she looks, Yihwan decides to help her. He suggests that she tag along with him, and he will help her get home. Suddenly, their attention is caught by the commotion outside. It looks like more and more zombies have gathered inside the store. Seeing this, the girl starts to cower even more, realizing that they have no chance of escaping. Yihwan acknowledges that they won't be able to get out unless he takes care of the nuisance outside. He rummages through the store's supplies and creates a temporary weapon to defend and attack. Before leaving the storeroom, he sternly instructs her not to open the door under any circumstances and assures her he will be back soon. With that, he heads out, leaving the girl pleading with him not to go. But he shuts the door in her face and goes to confront the zombies outside. After taking down the menace, Yihwan returns and reassures her that everything is taken care of. Seeing him stand there confidently causes the girl's face to light up with immense astonishment. Just to be sure, she asks if he's okay. He affirms that he is. While he wasn't sure before, after fighting off those zombies, he's pretty damn confident that he's in good shape. Most importantly, he points out that the zombies don't seem to attack him to devour him. Later, Yihwan goes into a garment shop and picks out some clothes for himself. After changing into fresh clothes, he finally leaves the store. As if luck is on his side, he spots a heavy bike parked on the other side of the road. The beauty of the bike seems to be staring back at him, almost as if it's inviting Yihwan to ride. Later, when we return to the convenience store, we find the girl also changing into the clothes he brought her. Yihwan apologizes to her, saying that he didn't know much about women's clothing, so he picked out whatever he thought might work. Since there aren't many zombies around, he decides to gather some food supplies before they leave. As they move through the shelves, Yihwan finds a baseball bat and takes it for himself. The girl expresses her concern over how he's putting his life at risk just to keep her safe. They are literal strangers, and she doesn't understand why he's helping her. She also assumes that, being an ajushi, he must have a family he wants to protect. First of all, Yihwan can't help but make a creepy face when she calls him ajushi again. Second, he reassures her that she shouldn't feel guilty. It's natural for someone to be in desperate need of help, and he's sure that someday he might need help too. Above all, since the zombies don't bite him, there's no real threat to his life. The moon is shining brightly, casting a calm light over the zombies that roam carelessly beneath it. But their tranquility is soon disrupted by the loud vroom of a 700cc engine. The one behind the handlebars is, of course, Yihwan, riding the new beauty. Even though he's making quite a bit of noise, the zombies don't immediately react, likely because his presence is overshadowing the girl sitting behind him. Since there are no obstacles in their path, he hopes to reach Nuna as soon as possible and rescue her from this mess. We cut to a gas station, where inside a tuck shop, a man is hiding from the zombies. The bottle he's holding is his last source of water, and he knows that doom is soon to follow. He curses his rotten luck for getting stuck in this tuck shop, which has already been completely looted. Suddenly, the sound of a motorcycle catches his attention. This leads him to believe that there are survivors in the area. What's worse is that the sound is getting closer and closer. Eventually, the sound halts right outside the tuck shop at the gas station. Seeing how the rider of the bike casually stops in the middle of the monster-infested area, the man inside the tuck shop starts to lose his mind. It may not be a great idea, but he decides to take a life-risking chance and call out to them. But his worries are unfounded because Yihuan is already taking down the mindless zombies one by one. With just a single hit, each monster is down for the count. As Yihuan takes down the zombies, the man in the tuck shop can hardly believe his eyes. Suddenly, a zombie sneaks up behind Yihuan, so the tuck shop man shouts a warning to him. All Yihuan does is take 2 steps back, and the zombie zips past him, as if Yihuan isn't even there. The sight leaves the man in the tuck shop in utter disbelief. Meanwhile, as the zombie is about to reach the girl behind the bike, my guy swings his bat with such force that the zombie flies through the air like a trash bag. With the area cleared, Yihuan tells the girl to rest assured. As for the man stuck in the tuck shop, he still can't do anything but stare in complete astonishment at Yihuan. If his eyes aren't fooling him, what he saw clearly proves that zombies weren't even trying to bite Yihuan at all. Yihuan proceeds to walk toward the fuel dispenser to fill up the motorcycle since the road ahead will be long. But the duo is startled when the middle-aged man finally emerges from the tuck shop, excitement bubbling inside him. He's absolutely certain that the person in front of him is the exclusive scoop, a term that goes completely over Yihuan's head. Drinking water as if he's never had something better in his life, the man remarks that he's glad he was able to quench his thirst. Curious, Yihuan asks him how long he's been hiding for. Turns out it's only been 3 days. Though the guy wasn't expecting the convenience store to be completely run down and empty without having any resources. He's a little hopeful, though, now that he's met his saviors in the apocalypse. In an effort to help better their relationship, he introduces himself as Kim Gi-do, a 32-year-old journalist who no longer cares about his job because their world has gone to shit. The girl is Park Gina, a 20-year-old freshman at her university. Finally, there's our boy Yihuan, who appears to be 28. He's rather reluctant in explaining that he's a mortician, or well used to be. Gi-do remarks that he doesn't look like one at all, while for some reason, Gina is staring at him, a detail he calls into question. It's actually because the chick is surprised this guy didn't turn out to be an old-ass boomer uncle. Gi-do learns how the two of them got together. Really, it was just a string of events that brought them together via the convenience store. Well, Yihuan admits that it's a little weird they never even exchanged names until this point. Anyway, Gi-do understands that both of them experienced some real horror being trapped here, which is something he's willing to expand on later. For now, he's actually pretty curious about something that's been bothering him. Gi-do straight up asks about Yihuan's strange ability, making him immune or invisible to zombies. Outside, the hordes of the undead are gargling and searching for fresh blood. Focusing back to their conversation, Yihuan tells his story of how he was knocked unconscious for 5 days inside the morgue, and only came to learn about the damning apocalypse after he got up. The most he recalls is getting sick before blacking out. The journalist is carefully penning down these details, confirming Yihuan's story that he made his escape from the hospital and found Gina shortly afterwards. Gi-do also confirms that Gina was looking for her family in the middle of these events. Now it seems like neither one of them actually knows about the events that took place, something Gi-do considers a blessing. Mortified, Gina asks why. He ends up explaining that the entirety of the planet was reduced to a zombie land within that timeline, so they can only imagine the worst. To expand on the details, the first 2 days were the definition of literal carnage. Normal people quickly turned into flesh-eating zombies, and most of them died without even getting the chance to know what was going on in the world. The really horrifying part is that they were hunted by their closest loved ones, not knowing what had gotten into their dear companions. With the way he's describing the details, Gina is out here weeping with her tear-filled eyes. The journalist apologizes for being too graphic in his details and emphasizes that Gina's family must be okay because of the confirmation of the call. He assures her that they'll meet again, a fact that Gina confirms, though her words are filled with doubt. Deciding to interject in the discussion, Yihuan is curious about the journalist's story. Of course, even Gi-do shares that being a journalist means very little to him right now. He was actually working on a case to find the cause of this apocalypse, and taking that risk led him to being stranded as he ran out of gas and ended up stuck. Invested in knowing the truth about the zombie apocalypse, Yihuan inquires about his findings. The journalist argues that it's not that important, and his attention is thwarted to a more pertinent matter. The minute he turns to his left, he's terrified to see a group of zombies lashing out against the window. The scene terrifies the entire group, especially since they can't even exit the gas station before becoming a stake to this mad horde of zombies. Yihuan believes they should step up the gas pedal and really get the fuck out before finding out. Since they can't use the bike in this instance, he asks about the location of Gi-do's car. It's parked on the roadside just a few minutes away. Of course, their only shot of getting to the car is if they get past these creepy fuckers into first place. Arming himself with a club, Yihuan decides to play the hero for them, declaring he'll clear a path while they'll block the door for him. It seems like a reckless idea to the journalist, especially since this guy is going to be risking his own life just to get out there. Yuan promises that he'll be okay, especially since he's got no zombies to worry about biting him. Turning to face Gina with a reassuring, gentle smile, he promises to take her home just like he said so. Letting out a breath, our boy pulls up in a 1 versus 50 royale. Before he leaves, Gina musters up the confidence to tell him that he should just refer to her by her name since their age gap isn't too far. Hearing that, our boy smiles, uttering her name as he goes on to face the threat. The funniest part is Gidoo out here acting like a third wheel in the midst of a troubled couple. Anyway, the creepy uglies outside weren't expecting it, but one human really did just make a superhero's entry to face them all. With a determined glare, Yuan declares that he won't let a single one of them get inside. The horde of zombies scream as one human beats the crap out of them with his strength. He turns to one walking just past him, and I don't know if Yuan had a personal grudge against this guy or something, but this dude really just slammed the shit out of him in the wall. He notes an interesting observation here. It's not just the fact that the zombies fail to attack him, but in fact, it's almost as if they don't recognize his presence at all. While he's figuring out the process of why this is the case, Yuan does not care for now. All he cares about is standing firm on his objective to stop them from coming inside. Watching the scene from the window, Gidoo finds himself on red alert. He can't believe his eyes. He makes the same observation as Yuan. But then there's also his terrifying strength increase that he's acquired out of nowhere. The way he's just destroying zombies by slamming them around exhausts quite a bit of his stamina, causing him to become hungry. Even though he recently had a meal, the feeling is similar to not having eaten for days. It's just like last time, making his body weak and in need of resources. Bashing the zombies left and right, Yuan concludes that he would probably feel a lot better after wiping the horde and consuming a meal. Meanwhile, the sight of Gina struck with incomprehensible terror causes Yuan to drop to his knees. It confuses Gidoo and worries Gina, because this guy is basically sitting breathless amongst the horde of the undead passing by. He doesn't know what happened just now, or why he could only think of Gina at that moment. Here's the jaw-dropping kicker. Yuan is actually experiencing a severe temptation to eat a human. He's no different than the zombies in that regard, which actually kind of makes sense why they don't recognize his presence. Anyway, Gina is really worried and wants to help him, but Gidoo sensibly tells her that it's reckless to do that. While they're arguing, Yuan reclaims his stance and continues mowing down the horde of the undead, hitting as many of them as he possibly can. He finishes his outlash by crushing a zombie's face into the ground. Unfortunately, by the end of his fiery attacks, he's left with a panting and terrified state. This is bad, and he knows it. Even Gidoo can sense it from afar. The puzzled, troubled, and conflicted protagonist tries to assure himself in his sea of doubts, believing that he's different from the zombies. He's a human, isn't he? Or that's what he wants to believe. His eyes beaming with a red spirit, Yuan declares that he will never stoop so low as to become a monster like them. Well, it's a good thing that his temptations went away after consuming some water. Yuan drank a ton of it, but it's only logical for how many zombies he took down on his own. Gina is worried that he might be hurt, but really, he didn't take any physical damage from the fight. Of course, the journalist believes that fighting so many of them and actually killing them isn't an easy thing. Still bothered by the extreme hunger he experienced, Yuan's temptation is replaced by a gut-wrenching pain in his stomach. Deciding to focus on moving the needle forward, Yuan recommends using Gidoo's car as their safest escape route. Of course, they can easily find a gas can around here somewhere and refuel the vehicle properly. Yuan suggests moving together because going alone is dangerous, bombarding them with a new level of panic. This one dude out of nowhere comes screaming for help. Luckily, he didn't get reduced to shreds from the zombie horde earlier. Yuan notices that this guy seems legit, evident by his cry for help. The thing is, his friend is actually grievously injured and at the risk of death. But this situation is kind of tricky, as you wouldn't always just trust someone in the middle of an apocalypse. Yuan calculates his options, while Gidoo recommends they stay sharp on their toes because these guys could still be harmful. Gina argues against this idea, believing they should still help others in need. In any case, Yuan agrees with her approach, no matter how naive. Gidoo gives up and agrees to do it if they're okay with it. So Gina opens the lock and welcomes these punks inside, who are just so grateful they took a chance on them. But unbeknownst to them, these guys truly are a bunch of scumbags and they just got a free ticket inside. Gina hands them some water to revitalize themselves and asks about an update regarding their situation. Of course, Gidoo is immediately skeptical and asks if their friend was bitten by a zombie. In response, the chubbier fellow panics and shows them there aren't any visible wounds. Another one of them believes that their friend should have turned into a zombie by now if that was the case. Anyway, the journalist is still doubtful and asks about their strategy to survive. Turns out these guys have nothing to go off of and were basically trying to find help for their friend. Gidoo is standoffish in his stance, but his attitude causes Gina to snap. She thinks he should focus on helping these guys while they're in danger, especially since it's only thanks to Yuan's consideration that they're alive. The guy who is sweating like bullets thanks them for their generosity. Gidu admits that perhaps he was too harsh in his approach, while Yihwan turns to him and asks if the car is an SUV. This means that all 5 of them can travel without any trouble. But of course, Yihwan has different plans because he wants to look for a motorcycle on his own. This is because he wants to lead the group by scouting for safer locations ahead of time. It's a wise strategy since they can't stay in one place forever. The journalist agrees with the idea, and they decide to get the car as soon as possible. Gina promises to handle the injured fellow while they're busy retrieving the car. Gidu tells her that they'll be back soon, so she's got nothing to worry about. Of course, that's how they both leave. But unbeknownst to them, these bastards were plotting a scheme all along. The scene cuts to Yihwan and Gidu arriving at the location of the car. They refuel the vehicle, but he's curious why the journalist is extremely opposed when it comes to the 3 new guys. Well, he explains that his gut is telling them not to trust these strangers, and it's only because of the sheer horror he experienced in the past few days that has made him cautious of others. Since he has such a cynical view of people, Yihwan is intrigued and asks why the journalist trusted them right off the bat. Well, it's because he was already going insane from the dehydration and had to find a way to survive. Yihwan is also curious why he referred to him as a scoop when they met each other, which basically means the journalist got lucky in finding a dude who is literally immune to the zombie apocalypse. In response, our boy's stomach cracks open the skies with a loud grumble. This man is probably going to eat like Goku after this shit ends. He gets flustered, but it's only logical for him to get so exhausted after battling against zombies. Gidu believes they should aim for finding food after the car. But something happens. A strange feeling creeps up on our protagonist, as he merely turns around, frozen in place. He has heard something, and it's not zombies this time. Yihwan is confident that he could hear Gina's voice. And now let's go back to the gas station, where a girl is screaming to be let go of. Gina has been seized by these bastards, who blackmail her by saying that she'll only attract the zombies with her whining. This causes her to freeze, even more when the barrel of a gun is placed against her head. The scumbag who was pretending to be sick reveals his true nature, overjoyed to have them right where he wanted. They fell for his shitty little gimmick, and he doesn't want to keep up with any disguises anymore. He and his group are planning to shoot down Yihwan and Gidu the moment they return. As for her, she will serve as their perfect hostage for the situation. Gina gets annoyed and bites his damn finger, making the clown squeal like a little bitch. He smacks her face and continues to mercilessly beat her down with his gun. Though she's knocked unconscious, he's still seething from the stinging pain. Even his friend thinks it's funny that this dude ended up getting bitten by a human instead of a zombie. Anyway, he's done playing around and wants the chubbier friend to stay and guard outside. This perverted freak just wants to have his way with her while she's vulnerable to them. He plans on taking her with them after killing both her friends. This disgusting prick is unbuttoning her pants when Yihwan comes around, enraged as he bashes this dude's head and knocks him flying. Like a ghost, he appeared out of nowhere, and seeing Gina's pitiful condition, rage is the only thing he can think about. Gidu also arrives, worried sick for her condition, and tries to help her out. He was right not to trust these freaks from the beginning. Yihwan requests the journalist to take her into the car. Meanwhile, this man is in the mood to leave a bunch of bodies behind, so he's going to be staying here for a bit. The journalist brings her to the car, glad that he wasn't attacked by zombies in the process. He turns to her. Gina clearly looks hurt. It was no different from what he suspected the first time he saw those guys. Gidu thinks it's a good way to teach a lesson to both Gina and Yihwan, warning them not to trust anyone right off the bat. But now she's safe, because even Gidu knows that they've got one hell of a protector. Speaking of our boy, let's zone in on the fight. This guy is passing these clowns a mean-ass glare. They just hurt his girl. No way he's gonna let this slide. In response, both dudes come out with weapons of their own. One holding a baton and the other a crowbar, talking shit to our boy for overestimating his capabilities. Yihwan doesn't say a word, and shockingly drops his metal bat, perplexing both of them. At first they think he chickened out from the fight, but the chubby fellow has caught on, and tells Gi-hun not to get ahead of himself because clearly something is wrong with this guy. Nerves pop out on his face, his expression of anger turning to sinister craziness. His thoughts are muddled, but the worst part? He's hungry. He's hungry to devour real human flesh, and his sanity as the cusp of destruction. Well, real shit goes down when he starts coming down on Gi-hun's corpse after killing him, enjoying every bite as he munches on his flesh. Then he turns to the rest, walking right up to the bastard who hurt Gina and took advantage of their trust. The guy is out here terrified to see Yihwan the way he's acting right now. We get a seriously frightening shot of our boy just staring him down like he's about to have some KFC out here. The dude flails his little gun in response, but in the end, Yihwan destroys him and consumes his flesh. After that, he quickly wiped off the blood. Gidu heard the gunshot sound and jumped out of the car in fear. But to his astonishment, only one man came out of the gas station alive, and it was Yihwan. Worried, he asks if our boy is doing okay, but in response, He asks about Gina's condition, who seems to be doing fairly well asleep. It's reassuring for him to hear that, but Gidu is wondering why he changed his clothes. Yihuan hands him the gun he retrieved from the clowns. It's a great thing to have in this damn apocalypse, so the journalist is happy. Also, he's more than willing to trust Gidu's intuition from now on, showing that he's adapting to his mistakes, unlike a fudge ton of protagonists and their naive optimism. Worried, the journalist asks if he's really okay or if something happened. Pretending to be normal, Yihuan shoots him a smile, masking his feelings and pain as he checks on the bike. It's finally time for them to get the hell out of here after all. Gidu doesn't know what the hell happened inside, but he chooses not to think too hard. It's time for the group to leave, so they head off. During their ride, Gina reawakens only to find herself surprised that she's in a car with the journalist. She doesn't know what happened, but Gidu promises that they dealt with the manipulative assholes who tried to take advantage of them. Also, Yuan is determined not to leave her side and plans to be extra protective of her. Hearing that, Gina cries, holding her face in tears. It causes Gidu to worry that she might have gotten hurt somewhere. She ponders why those people, the same people they tried to help, took advantage of them. They had noble intentions, and yet, instead of looking to survive together, those guys instilled a permanent despairing feeling in her heart, causing her trust issues with anyone she is now going to meet. It's not a good feeling, and Gidu understands, but he gives her the words she needs to hear. On the bright side, he wants her to fully trust Yuan, even if she doesn't trust anyone else, as he's more than willing to protect her, no matter what happens. Let me pause for a moment and break down the significance of the scene where Yihuan gave the journalist the gun. It's actually because he doesn't trust himself and wants Gidu to handle him in case he spirals out of control. Okay, going back into the story, Yuan and his group clear the area inside a building. With every last one downed, our boy wants to take his friends to the room he saw, but his eyes darted to a picture frame of a loving family. He almost forgot these zombies were once real people, and apologizes for having killed the father. Anyway, he secured 2 rooms for his group. There's not much for them to worry about anymore, but he's confused why the journalist wanted them to stay the night, especially since they've got a travel vehicle now and all. It's because Gidu wanted them to rest from all the exhaustion, as traveling in the daytime would be safer. To top it off, it's imperative for Gina to get all the rest she needs. Worried, Yuan asks if she'll be alright. It's not looking bright because she's endured a severe mental scar from this experience, halting her ability to trust anyone anymore. It's a hopeless feeling, and it's really sad how some traumatic experiences can corrupt a person's view of the world for the rest of their lives. But the journalist argues that it's necessary for Yihuan to play his role well here. Since she doesn't trust anyone anymore, she will only rely on someone like Yihuan, the man who saved her and protected her time and time again. Yihuan doesn't really want to step into those shoes and expresses that it's literally their first day together. But the journalist argues that they've been through a lot of shit for one day, which is also true. Anyway, the second reason he wanted to locate a place to rest is because of Yihuan himself. As he's a reporter, he's been meaning to ask him a bunch of things. The first question is why the zombies don't see his presence. Of course, our boy doesn't know the answer to that question, but he strongly believes that they don't recognize him at all. The journalist enters a contemplative state, wondering what kind of explanation could help describe the cause. Since it's their first day together, they don't know much, but Gidu wants him to keep him updated in case Yihuan discovers something new about his condition. The next question is whether or not our boy has dabbled in sports or martial arts before. The question comes across strange to Yihuan, who denies any such thing, because that's the one thing that really surprised the journalist. His monstrous strength, as he was casually picking up zombies and slamming them into walls and pavements like they were nothing. The journalist declares that it's almost as if he isn't even human, a phrase that makes Yuan coil into fear. Gidu understands that even Yihuan is clueless about his condition. To disengage from the serious topic, the journalist apologizes for asking so much out of the guy right after he saved their lives. Also, Yuan's quest to find his sister is still up in the air. He wants to check their home to see how she's doing, since his sister is located in Yangyang, and that place is pretty far away from here. There's no telling if they'll be able to make the transport. Still, despite the odds and the difficulties presented in front of him, Yihuan wants to do everything in his power to help save his sister. The journalist strongly opposes the idea because the place is far away, and there's no need for him to be so reckless. Yihuan doesn't understand why either, though he senses that it's just the right thing to do, no matter how hard. Hearing those words, Gina appears to be awake, her eyes filled with tears, moved by Yihuan's honesty. Gidu thinks the guy is a bit too nice, and it only makes sense why Gina trusts him unconditionally. Journaling his thoughts on paper, Gidu wants to conclude the conversation with one question. He wants to know if Yuan has sensed any specific patterns about the zombies, just about any kind of information that could help them in the long run. Scratching his head in confusion, Yuan replies that he doesn't know anything meaningful. He believes their senses are still intact, But that theory is also inconsistent, because it doesn't add up why zombies can tell the difference between humans and one of their own. Surprising them with her sudden entry, Gina drops a bombshell. The zombies are actually attracted to exposed skin, as per the words of her manager, who hid in the storage room before being attacked. Gidu is worried that she's up early, but Gina sits down after failing to fall asleep for a while. Also, she apologizes to our boy for making him needlessly worried, reassuring him that she's better now. Anyway, Gidu is curious by her words and asks for more. Gina explains that the zombies are drawn to exposed skin, which is also why she asked for longer pants back at the store. The troubled reporter is even more confused than before, realizing that they've got much to work with here. In any case, it's best for them to look for gloves to cover more of their skin. Gina actually ends up finding a functioning radio nearby. The transmission from radio mentions the 6th day of the virus outbreak, remarking how life continues to be threatened by the apocalypse. Gina can't believe that the radio is actually functioning at this time. The broadcast is live, reporting the 5 days of the apocalypse. Yihuan and Gidu are shocked to find the channel still functioning, which means the station must be safe. But Yihuan believes that they might be trapped inside the station. Instead, this may seem more like a distress signal instead of an actual broadcast. Well, Gina knows the station is nearby, so Gidu recommends they leave it in the hands of Yihuan, who should make the ultimate call. After all, he's the only one among them capable of navigating inside the station. Still, Yihuan strongly believes that finding Gina's parents is more of a priority, and he's fine with reconsidering their options after that. Seeing him stand up for her so many times, Gina feels relieved. The journalist is okay with that thought and suggests they all take some rest. In the next scene, we get a dream sequence where our boy is bolting away from the zombies in fear. They're slowly getting to him, and in the end, all he can do is brace himself for the pain to come. Yihuan snaps out of it and sees Jinmin's body appear before his eyes. It's clearly shocking because he's not supposed to be alive. It makes him wonder if the whole zombie apocalypse thing was a dream to begin with. But then, Bro's life turns to shit as a horde of zombies savor on a human's flesh, giving him more nightmares to think about. Jinmin invites his buddy to go along and eat with them, as he's supposed to like human flesh. And his face looks like something out of a horror movie. Imagine your best buddy covered in blood like that and inviting you to eat human flesh. Scary, right? Yihuan finally awakens, his breath panting and his eyes full of horror. Daylight hits the edge of his bed, and peace eventually sets in. His hands still tremble from the experience as he collects his thoughts, reinforcing himself once more that he'll never turn out to be like the zombies. The scene cuts to a different location where a couple is resting on their bed, having freshly run out of food to eat. Instead of worrying about their own health, they're even more worried about their daughter Gina. They're hoping she was rescued by a reliable person. The poor mother just wants to see her daughter a second time, and they embrace their demise as there's nothing they can do. Suddenly, Gina's father is drawn to a sound that wakes him up. He heard a motorcycle hinting at a survivor. To his surprise, the bike stopped. Around, the zombies are mangling about. So this decision seems reckless to Gina's parents, because they don't know about Yuan's special powers. He's safely come to the exact location Gina described, but there's no signs of human life so far. He entertains the idea of neutralizing the horde before expanding their search. So our boy uses his trusty metal bat to knock the ever-living crap out of one of them. The scene leaves Gina's parents at a loss for words. They are seeing one dude just destroy zombies without any trouble. It makes them wonder what kind of person he is. With the path cleared, Yihuan looks around and realizes why Gidu's car can't make it this deep into the city without clearance. So now he wants to scout his surroundings to investigate more. Yihuan ends up walking in the direction of their house, hopping over the wall. They're afraid of going out and trusting a complete stranger until suddenly, Yihuan addresses them and asks for confirmation of Gina's parents. Both of them come rushing to welcome him after hearing their daughter's name. They're so caught up that it startles even Yihuan for a second. Fast forwarding to Gina finally getting a chance to embrace her parents, the family goes for a happy reunion. Seeing them get back together, Yihuan's face lights up, relieved that he was able to fulfill his promise. Unfortunately, Gidu has to remind them to do this inside as it's still unsafe out here. Gina's father grabs his hand, thanking them dearly for taking care of their daughter. Of course, the journalist doesn't want to take any credit and tells them it was all Yihuan's doing. They head inside, at last, Gina's parents explaining how they were lucky and how they managed to create multiple blockades against the zombies to ensure their survival. Unfortunately, being trapped inside expired their resources and they did everything to search for their daughter. Luckily, they have her back now, so they're extremely grateful to the two men that helped her. But Gidu explains that it's all thanks to Yuan, who has been taking care of things for them. Yihuan learns that they didn't step foot outside for 6 days. The power went out, but thankfully water was working fine, and that's how they survived. Well, there wasn't any food left to eat, so they were practically starving to death at this rate. Yuan realizes he has to do something about their situation and remembers riding past a supermarket down the road. The shutters were down, which means the supermarket probably has a boatload of resources inside, making it a good way for them to stack up on resources. He has to ensure their survival, so he's going to go outside. But Gina's father is against the idea, as he would be risking his life for them. Even then, Yuan believes they can't survive without the basic human resource. Plus, they haven't eaten anything for 2 days, and he can't just glance over them. Agreeing with the idea, Gidu pitches in, stating that they should prioritize survival, as anything could happen with the way things are going. Gina's father musters up the resolve to help our boy. But of course, Yihuan wouldn't want to risk something like that, so he turns him down and tells him to focus on Gina's condition first. Hearing that, Gina's father is reduced to a mess. There's nothing more endearing like a man worried for his family. Well, Yihuan takes off. Gidu intends to come along with him to manage the food. Following Gina's theory, he's got himself covered completely and wants to help Yihuan by being useful instead of acting as a burden. That's a good thing for the protagonist who's got a dependable ally to work with. They say their goodbyes to the family and ride away. Of course, Gina's family is worried, but she's hella confident in our boy's survivability and believes Yuan will always return. At the supermarket, the two of them crack open the locks and lift the shutter, exposing an untouched stash of valuables for them to steal. It's a miracle to find a supermarket like this in such an apocalypse. With so much to use, Yihuan and Gidu are confident the family can easily survive for a few years with this much stuff. They get busy collecting what they need, and the scene transitions to the MBS headquarters. Here, a worried man talks to someone on the phone. Unfortunately, he's stuck handling the daily broadcast and has to follow strict instructions. Suddenly, he hears a sudden message from the other side, telling him about important information. When the call ends, the guy is left questioning the purpose behind the messages being broadcasted. Among his jotted thoughts, he has recently come to know of a bike rider whose identity is unknown to him. Yuan and Gidu acquired what they needed the most. Also, they use this chance as an opportunity to grab a bunch of medicines from the pharmacy as well. All of a sudden, the journalist is feeling the crushing weight of stealing from stores. Still, it's too late for them to be worrying about meaningless things like that when the world is destroyed. Since looting the store is going to take a bit, Yihuan is on guard duty, especially since medicines need to be carefully checked before being taken. The MBS headquarters is just up ahead, and Yihuan is busy staring at it. He recalls the broadcast was from the same radio, which means Gina was correct about it being close by. Gidu thinks it would be unwise to worry about the broadcast at this time, especially since they have to take care of Gina's family first and focus on finding his sister. Gidu tells him to just give it up for now and focus on more pertinent matters. Though reluctant, Yuan understands that he has to find his sister as soon as possible, especially since she's stopped responding to his messages. Fast-forwarding back to Gina's family, they share an excellent meal, revitalizing themselves after being completely drained for 2 days. The family is so grateful that he's done so much for them. All of this should last the four of them a minimum of 6 months. Unfortunately, he won't be staying since he has to go find his sister. Gina's family is worried, and her mother asks about his sister's location. Whoa, did I just drop a Five Nights at Freddy's reference? Anyway, bro's sister lives really far away, so it's not going to be easy. Yuan understands that, but he has to save his one and only family he has left. Hearing that, Gina sits in silence, understanding his pain. Though he has one more request. After saving his sister, our boy wants to bring her back to Gina's family, which makes her feel flustered. Yihuan strongly believes that this is the safest place among all, and it's not like his sister has important connections of her own to worry about in these times. Since the zombies can't bite him, he'll be of great use to them anyway. He just wants to make sure Gina is safe, and he's willing to do anything for that. That's why he promises to return with his sister and help them out even more. Of course, Gina's family can't even decline a request like this, but they do have one strong objection. Gina's father is out here having a temper tantrum because bro thinks our boy wants to steal his daughter. Even the mom catches on, but she's more supportive than anything. Can't believe they're thinking about grandkids when they're in the middle of a damn apocalypse. At night, they have to manage their way with candles. There's no power after all. Yihuan learns that Gina's parents are fast asleep. They continue on their nightly talks, Gidu calculating his thoughts. He wonders how much food they'll have to take to get to Yangyang for 2 people. Hearing that, Yuan remarks in confusion, especially when the journalist admits that he's coming along to help our boy. It seems like a ridiculous idea to abandon a safe location like this, but Gidu understands the risks. It's just that he's always been part of a risky job. He's just dying to know more about Yihuan, and that's why he's sticking to him like a persistent bug. Bro is going to use him to make a name for himself, but it really makes me laugh because it's not like anyone's going to be caring about fame in a zombie apocalypse, right? Gidu reminds him of Yihuan's own words, who boldly said that he'd trust the journalist's words from now on. Promising not to be a burden, the journalist assures him that they'll be fine. Also, since he's traveled a lot as a journalist, he knows all the ways to handle safe navigation. Yihuan is okay with that, so Gina gives them one last thing to go along their journey. It's actually the radio that she picked up from the building. It's going to be useful in learning about new information around the area, even though Gidu is a bit skeptical on that front. Yihuan is startled when the radio suddenly pops open a new transmission. The transmission talks about the confirmed reports of multiple witnesses from around the area. The center of attention is a man who is immune to the undead, someone famously dubbed as the Motorcycle Man. As the broadcast sinks in, Gidu quickly catches on that the radio is probably talking about our boy. The reporter further continues about this mysterious motorcycle man, who was first sighted in Incheon. Then, Buchan, Gangseo, and Hwagok all say this guy is heading straight for the heart of Seoul. That's the man who doesn't get hit by the infected. Maybe he is the solution to all their problems. Clinging to hope in the middle of all this mayhem, he initiates the MBS midday radio. Meanwhile, Yihuan, sitting next to Blondie on the couch, looks shaken like he wasn't expecting to hear that. RJ continues, saying that a man who gets no darn effect on him if attacked by the infected. That news isn't something he bought at first, and who would broadcast this bullcrap? He says he has gotten some complaints, telling him not to give people false hope. But even though he is stuck in this broadcast studio, he keeps it going just to send even the tiniest spark of hope to the survivors listening. The lot stuck in the endless rut of despair and loneliness. He wants to let them know that giving up isn't an option. He has faith that hope will never die, and that salvation will come to pass. That's MBS Radio's Produce, coming live, Sun Jinchul. The trio listening to Jincheol looks straight up stunned by all this. Meanwhile, Jinchul throws on a track to lighten the mood. A soothing song for troubled hearts, worn out from all the despair. With that, RJ hits play, letting the song flow to countless souls stuck in the depths of despair. Leaning back like a dead weight, RJ looks completely drained. Even after preaching hope on the radio, he doesn't seem to believe in it himself. With a worrisome fact, he has no clue how much longer he can keep up this life. Back at the house, the trio just sits there, totally speechless. No one has even said a word in minutes. Then, Gidu breaks the silence, confirming if the RJ called himself Sun Jinchul, the PD from MBS. Yihuan tends to ask if Gidu knows the guy. Reaching for his pocket, Gidu mumbles under his breath upon having Jinchul's number somewhere. He finally finds it. So, he definitely met the guy at the Radio Current Affairs department. What's wild, though, is that he is starting to think Jincheol might be running the whole station solo. Aside from that, Yuan checks with Gidu to see if the radio place is still taking reports for the broadcast. Gidu is sure they are still doing it, no doubt. After taking it all in, Yuan finally speaks up, ready to claim that he is the motorcycle guy. This big confession drop of this guy blows their minds. No doubt he straight up admits that the truth is, zombies don't bite him. But he still has no clue why. Despite everything, Yuan, having a long face, didn't want to give people false hope. He feels like he doesn't deserve to pull this stunt. However, Gidu tries to understand his side of the view, but he suggests the guy try taking caution at something that could endanger his life, especially when he is living in a world where trusting anyone is the act of a fool. In Gidu's view, if this guy exposed his identity, he is definitely screwed. But Yihuan feels like stuff like that doesn't really matter now. Flashing a grin, he straight up says that exposing his identity isn't a big deal, especially in a world like this. Still, he tells them to take a chill pill, swearing that he will be as careful as possible so there won't be anything to worry about. Sighing aloud, Gidu gives away the green flag finally, letting Yuan do his thing. Afterwards, Gidu decides to hook Yuan up with that broadcast guy. After all, he is somewhat tight with the PD personally. Moreover, he is sure that the PF will only buy his story if he vouches for him. For that, Yuan is really grateful to Gidu for his non-stop support till now. Ringing the call to the MBS Sun Jinchul, Gidu claims to be Kim Gidu, asking if he is in the middle of the broadcast. Jinchul can't believe his ears upon hearing the voice of journalist Kim Gidu. Feeling relieved, he goes ahead and asks if Gidu is in a safe spot right now. Gidu admits to being in a safe situation. Brushing it off, he gets to the real thing. That's when he confesses to keeping intel that needs reporting. Without wasting time, Gidu drops a big hint, saying the motorcycle guy from the broadcast might just be his colleague. Spilling that out, Gidu and Yihuan look at each other for a moment, but Jinchul practically jumps out of his seat. The dude can't handle this bombshell, asking if he's really speaking the truth. Right then he flinches as this grave news breaks out. He trembles like a shaky leaf, struggling to make sense of it all. Snapping out of it, Jincheon hurries over to the radio system. He apologizes to the audience, claiming to have gotten a major tip-off urgently, so he decides to cut the transmission with this last song. Back to the call, Jincheol can only hope Gidu's words of wisdom hold true. With reports about the motorcycle guy coming in now and then, there's a lot of uncertainty, some true, some just rumors. When asked, Gidu didn't even hesitate. He was ready to stake his name on it, just like any true journalist would. That takes Jinchul by surprise, whose eyes pop out of his socket in shock. Taking a look back, Gidu, fighting through the crowd, calls back to the Humpty Dumpty-looking chairman. At the part of his unfair appointment, Gidu demands an explanation from the chairman. In his journaling days, Gidu, shivering in the cold, awaited the explanation. But he never got the chance. Now Jincheol is ready to buy Gidu's truth, confirming if his colleague is still with him. That said, Gidu signals Yixuan, and he then joins the call, claiming to be the motorcycle guy. This mere voice stuns Jincheol for a moment. Keeping it cool, he has got his list of questions ready, ones he needs answers to. Meanwhile, the lot from every corner of the world hears RJ Jincheol, stating that the motorcycle guy actually holds great importance. For his listeners, he knows that everyone has fallen into the pit of despair. And for them, just knowing someone out there can't be bitten by the infected, that alone is their last shred of hope. Without further ado, Sun Jincheol asks Yixuan if it's all true, and that's when he verbally confesses to being immune to the infected. However, the reason is still unknown. Furthermore, he goes on to say that the infected don't seem to notice him at all. They don't get aggressive and barely react to his voice like he is not even here. Jincheol notes it all down. After a sudden pause, Yuan says he still isn't the kind of hope Jincheol is looking for. Yeah, he's helped some people with this ability, but he's got his own limits too. That's that. Jincheol decides to pass only the verifying intel, even if Gidu has vouched for him. Moreover, he demands to see any evidence proving his immunity to the infected. Yuan asks Jincheol if the area around MBS is swarming with the infected. That sends chills down Jincheol's spine. Yuan confirms that he's coming there himself. The same night, Jincheol is having a hard time buying Yuan gutsy claims. Jincheol demands to know if he will be daring to come solo for real. With eyes filled with determination, he declares that that's the only condition for making Jincheol believe his story. Then he is down to taking the risk for it. That's enough to freak Jincheol out. But his RJ protocol wouldn't let him bend the rules of passing the intel without verification. Thus, he is expecting Yixuan to come by MBS, as it wouldn't trouble him if the infected doesn't give a damn about him. Then, he drops his current whereabouts, residing inside MBS, broadcasting station on the 8th floor, second studio from the end of the right hallway. Jincheol warns this hi-fi immunity claimer that his station is practically overrun by the infected mafia. However, Yixuan, unfazed, still sets their meeting time for tomorrow, as this guy doesn't care whatsoever. After this, Jincheol redirects to journalist Gidu, saying that he never imagined hearing his voice in times like these. Thus, he wishes that Gidu take good care of himself. To ease the PD's troubled mind, Gidu assured him that they would find him soon. And just like that, the call ends. The infected's radar doesn't sense Yixuan at all. Not to mention, he is completely immune to their mess, and they won't bite him no matter what. All this information is seemingly hard to process for this guy, but Jincheol's mind wanders, questioning what if it's all true. Letting it all sink in, Jincheol realizes Yixuan isn't just hope, but he might be salvation itself. The next day, Yixuan's prep is all set, telling Gidu that outside is wide open, clear as day, and not a single zombie near his car. Gearing up, Gidu is pretty much ready for this heist. Right then, Ajina's mother comes down to hand over Yixuan some homemade rice balls. She believes that it's going to be a rough and tough ride, so it's good to have something. The dude practically jumps in excitement to notice a pile of rice balls packed in the box for him. After thanking her a big time, he promises to eat it all. Just like that, this woman warns Yixuan to be extra careful and bring back his sister in one piece, because they will definitely be waiting for them. Just as Yixuan steps out, Gina rushes out to get his attention. At a loss for words, she couldn't meet his eyes. He assures Blondie that there's nothing to worry about as zombies wouldn't dare mess with him. However, her emotions go wild, and before she knows it, she is wrapping Yixuan in a tight hug. That catches him off guard. But this cutie couldn't help but thank Yixuan for everything. But she wants this guy to return at all costs. Turning as red as a tomato, Yixuan tells her not to worry, as he fully intends to return safely. Out of nowhere, Gidu feels the ick, dismissing this union. The dude rants that dating is all fine, but marriage can't be far too rushed. Feeling utterly disgusted at this old fool, they make horrible faces at him, showing their annoyance. Afterward, Yixuan heads out, while the people behind hope for their safe return. Hours later, Yixuan and Gidu get to the crazy zone infested with zombies. With Gidu packed and secure in the car, the immunized Yixuan, bat in hand, scored good hits at those brainless dum-dums. One savage hit catches the attention of other zombies, who couldn't help turning to look. Having a close inspection, Yixuan speculates that if they don't take down this swarm, this whole area will be a pain in the head. Not only that, he believes it will become much more dangerous to find shelter in this chaos. Gidu understands where he is coming from and tends to let Yixuan handle this one. Although Yuan, taking a sigh, knows that it ain't an easy task, but he doesn't have any choice left. Gripping his bat, this big shot warns the brainless army that he gotta pass through by all means. Inside, Sun Jinchul is close to passing out due to extreme weakness. Dumped in the corner, Jinchul feels like his body is giving out. Whatever strength is left of him, he thinks to have reached his limit. Any more of this, and he is done with this life. Nothing to drink or to eat. His supplies have run out long ago, so he resorts to waiting for his death. By the looks of his health, today's broadcast doesn't seem like a possibility now. Still, he feels even worse for not leaving a farewell message in yesterday's broadcast, if only he knew things would sink this low. Even more so, Jinchul anticipated this much to happen like this. But he would have one lasting regret. He still desires to confirm the truth behind the motorcycle man. Feeling dizzy, like he's one step from the stairway to heaven, Jinchul thinks it's a damn shame to go out without satisfying his curiosity. All of a sudden, Jinchul's phone flashes a ring that catches his attention. As it turns out, that's his fellow journalist, Kim Gi-do. Without missing a beat, he grabs his phone to answer quickly. Thus, the speaker blows a concerned voice, and Gi-do demands to know if Jinchul is still doing okay. And just like that, Gi-do finally gets an answer, as Jinchul confirms to be doing fine for now. Sighing in relief, Gi-do lets him know to hang in there, as they are surely not so late. This hint spikes his curiosity, and also passes a chill down his spine. Seeding bullets like crazy, he straight up questions Gi-do, asking his current whereabouts. Without further ado, Gi-do calmly lets him know that they successfully arrived at the MBS building. Suddenly, Jinchul's soul probably jumps out of his skin, having a hard time buying this all. He can't believe those fools actually made it to the MBS building. Even then, he warns the idiots that the entrance is infested with zombies, making it impossible to let anyone pass through. To ease his mind, Gi-do initiates a video call routine with Jinchul. Just as Gi-do gets him on FaceTime, Jinchul's mind gets blown away to witness the atrocious acts of motorcycle guy yanking the zombies away. He takes notice of the infected getting slammed away, crushed by a bat, only to carve a path straight to the entrance. That man alone is being a total menace to wipe them out. Gi-do explains that if he stepped outside, he would be 1 second from death. But in the case of Yuan, the guy is built differently. Sun Jinchul bears witness to seeing Motorcycle Man true to his words. He sees the first guy who isn't a zombie's preferred menu. No bite from the brainless rot makes him the face of hope. After wiping them out, Yuan's head zones out, with endless thoughts. This all occupies his head, haunted by the trauma of butchering countless people. After a momentary pause, he gives away the green flag for Gi-do, saying that it's safe to step out now. And then Gi-do comes out believing that it's all for real. So he stands by his wise words to set the record straight. He states that the broadcasting station would remain a hellhole if someone like Yuan didn't take a step to disinfect it. Only he got the chance to enter the MBS building. Just then, Yuan spots a police shield lying around useless. Time to grab something useful. He hands the police shield over to Gi-do, saying it will definitely come in handy. No doubt Gi-do feels the same way. Moving ahead, Yuan is sure of butting into many more brainless duds inside. Thus, he gives a piece of advice Gi-do's way that his best chance of surviving this is by sticking closer to him. With that, he wouldn't have a problem living another day. Gi-do remembers the inside of the MS building is nothing short of a labyrinth for the newbies. But thanks to Gi-do's familiarity with this place, he gets to be the guide who knows the radio station's layout. Thus he wishes to be their navigator in this assignment. And just like that, these two brave fools make their way inside. Walking inside, mostly it's all vacant, luckily, wherever these two patrol. Yuan, with the baseball bat as his weapon of choice, checks out another room, but it's steered clear of any survivors or zombies. That surprises Gi-do, but he feels something's off. Climbing up, Gi-do has this unsettling feeling bubbling in his chest, which is forcing him to keep a lookout. Head turn every other second. The dude mutters that this kind of silence just doesn't feel right. Then, he tends to ask Yuan if everyone just bolted when the incident went down. At first, Yuan's mind races countless thoughts to cook a reason for it. However, he ends up coming up with a question instead. Without wasting time, he asks Gi-do why Jinchul is so determined to keep the broadcast going. Although he gets the idea that regardless of his situation, that all must be really tough for him. But even then, why must he keep the broadcast going? Giving it a thought, Gi-do probably thinks it's his sense of responsibility as an informant. After all his years of working at broadcasting station, he kept providing all kinds of info. Even at these dire times, Gi-do believes that Jinchul wishes to keep doing what's in his power, like a sense of duty to mankind. Yuan thinks the work Gi-do and Jinchul do as journalists are seriously impressive, which catches Gi-do off guard. As a couple of journalists, they didn't seem to lose their sense of duty and kept collecting intel to make sense of this situation. And in many ways, probably trying to resolve this situation. Besides that, Yuan feels like there's nothing he can really do as a mortician, which makes him feel kind of pathetic. Just then Gidu hits him with the shield, which almost pops his eyeballs out. He asks Gidu what's the fuss, but Gidu claims this hit on Gina's name. He believes that Gina would have done the same thing if he saw Yuan's loser self resurfacing. Without a doubt, Gidu comes up with a question, asking Yuan who is the person that can comfortably exist without so much care in this world. Cutting to the chase, Gidu spits out fairly that Yuan has a million chances to look for his way out, and he can set his mind to do anything. Even then, he bluntly chose to rescue Gina, himself, and their family. Now Gidu flashes his point that Yuan is going out of his way to save PD Jinchul too. That's something only Yuan has the power to do, but the real reason behind it is something entirely else. That said, Gidu insists it's a choice he made because it's the right thing to do. Furthermore, this world reeks of people with malice, not just survival. And the guys who messed with Gina at the gas station quite make an example. But even in this messed up world, Yuan steps in to help purely out of pure goodwill. What's so pathetic about that? And Gidu guarantees that no one else in the world has stepped up to do what Yuan has done so far. That does the trick, and Yuan thanks Gidu for this thumbs up. Reaching the 8th floor, these two goofballs are ready for the showdown. Carefully sneaking in, they enter the silenced corridor that luckily runs vacant too. At the left end of the hallway, the second door, they finally reach the entrance of Studio 6. Gidu plans to call Jinchul, oblivious to what's about to hit them. In mere seconds, a hungry freak infected leaps into action to get a good bite of Gidu. Turning his head, Gidu freaks out, as his soul jumps out of his skin in pure terror. Just in time, Yuan yanks Gidu out of the way, and the lad gets sent flying like a missile. But to their darn luck, that zombie bites the wrong guy. Panic sets in, Gidu screams, worried sick for Yuan who has fallen for the zombie's bite. Right then, he lands a savage blow to knock the zombie out of the way. At his wit's end, the lad can't believe he got bitten by the infected. Gidu is practically losing his mind. At this moment, Yuan has no clue what's about to happen next, wondering if he is about to change as well. He tends to ask Gidu if he is still keeping that gun with him. Gidu's chill levels plummeted faster, and he was drenched in sweat, unable to make sense of these dire circumstances. Yuan hopes that he is still carrying one. Gidu went from 0 to existential dread pretty fast. The dude took business days to process what Yuan was implying. Sweating bullets, he demands to know what Yuan has in mind. However, Yuan is in a rush to get this over with, bursting into Studio 6. Inside, he found the same zombie he knocked down moments before trembling. Seeing this horrific sight, he refuses to fall to this degree and be like them. Thus, he decided to do his best until he lost his mind. Meanwhile, the woman, practically shivering like a shaky leaf, snaps out of the zombie fever, begging Yuan to stop. Now that wasn't in the cards. Yuan's eyes widened in shock to see a zombie shifting back to his human mode. Yuan stands face to face with this anomaly, while Gidu watches it all go down from outside the room. Bawling her eyes out, she begs Yuan to save her. She pleads for a chance to prove her innocence, insisting she hasn't done anything. Totally thrown off, Gidu wonders if she is actually infected or not. However, Yuan can't ignore the truth that she jumped at him to attack and bite him. If she isn't infected, then why did she bite his hand? Along with momentary silence, the room fills with the woman's sobs. That's when Yuan decides to get her out of this risky place and take her to the studio first. The sight sent a jolt of terror through Gidu's mind, practically paralyzing this dude out of fear as Yuan decided to take the biter with them. He reasons with Scaredy Cat that she isn't infected, so they can't let her rot here. He makes up his mind to think it over after reaching a much safer place. In the middle of processing this foolish idea, Gidu notices Yuan's bitten hand and finds something odd. As it turns out, the wound healed in a matter of seconds. This shocking revelation hits him like a ton of bricks. On the other hand, Jinchul, probably lifeless or drawing on his last reserves, lies in the corner in wait of his rescuers. He's pretty sure he hears something nearby, making him wonder what's going on. That's when Gidu's call alert catches him off guard, so he picks right up, asking if they are all right. Gidu rightfully confirms Jinchul's location to be Studio 6. Without further ado, Gidu requests Jinchul to open the door, as he is at the entrance. Completely thrown off, he tends to question if Gidu is actually there and whether the area around him is safe. Gidu nods, giving a quick yes, saying there aren't any infected around. Getting down to opening the door, Gidu looks behind at Yuan comforting the former infected. Jinchul and the former zombie dig into Gina's homemade rice balls like they haven't eaten in 3 days. Meanwhile, Gidu pays his respects to Jinchul for keeping up the broadcast for a whole week by himself. Witnessing the crazy hunger pangs, Yuan tells the lads to calm down, as there is enough for them. Jinchul mentions finding some food here, luckily, so he is all full for now. He figures that compared to the woman who went a full week starving, he's still in a much better spot. Eating like a maniac and gulping down water at a much faster pace, she finally takes a good long breath. And just then, she thanks her heroes for saving her life. She has no clue how to pay them back. Yihwan brushes it off, and Gidu confirms her name to be Choi Sujin. When asked, Sujin admits to working at the department store. Turns out Sujin was heading to MD for a broadcasting sponsorship when everything suddenly went haywire in the hallway. Out of nowhere, screams filled the station, coming at her from every direction. Sensing something was off, she did her best to run. But luck wasn't on her side. She stumbled right into a horde of zombies. They tore into her, dragging her into darkness. Now, as she recalls it, tears well up in her eyes. Letting her calm down, they slip into a 2-minute silence routine. Breaking the silence, Jinchul questions what's the first thing Sujin remembers after that. Thinking back, she says she heard 2 voices, which instantly stuns Yihwan and Gidu. Mild at first, she states that it grew gradually, followed by the taste of blood. Panic sets in, as Sujin bets that it felt strangely strong. Looking back, the memory is still so vivid in her mind. It lingers on her lips as if it just happened. Seeing how these hungry folks hadn't even had a moment to breathe, Yihwan decided to continue this conversation in a better setting. For now, they let the woman get some well-needed rest. Afterward, Jinchul is completely fascinated to learn that this woman is actually a former zombie. Gidu confirms that she jumped in to attack him but ends up biting Yihwan instead, only to suddenly turn human again. Not to mention, Yihwan's arm, which took the bite hard, didn't turn infected. And of course, the wound healed itself like it was never even there. Jinchul buys it totally, not in need of Gidu's evidence report. After seeing Yihwan's unnatural immunity to zombies, nothing else can surprise him. Rather, this whole situation got him thinking about a new hypothesis, since the real cause of the crisis still hasn't come out yet. Even the government couldn't keep up, and martial law turned out to be completely useless. Jinchul thinks of the possibility that it's an airborne virus, turning people into zombies. Gidu tends to ask why they haven't been affected. To counter this question, Jinchul's paints quite a picture that they are primary immune bodies, with resistance to airborne infection. This whole theory kind of blows their minds. Even if their immunity only worked against airborne infection, the easy transmission through blood or saliva, like a bite, could still turn them into zombies. In the case of Yihwan, Jinchul formalized the theory of full-body immunity, making Yihwan the safest dude in the world. Thus, when Sujin tasted Yihwan's blood during the bite, it somehow turned her back into a human. This whole explanation now points straight at Yihwan. Jinchul declares that Yihwan might not just be completely immune but a walking, talking vaccine. Yihwan stands still, trying to understand what he just heard. The idea of being a vaccine seems impossible, yet everything that has happened makes him rethink it. His mind keeps going back to the events leading up to this moment, searching for an explanation. Afterward, Son Jinchul, who has been observing the situation carefully, explains that it is only a theory. However, based on what they have seen, it makes the most sense. Gidu steps in, suggesting they slow down and think things through. The situation is complicated, and rushing to conclusions will not help. Going over everything properly is the only way to understand what is happening. Afterward, they recall the moment when Sujin, already turned into a zombie, bit Yihwan. By all known rules of the infection, he should have changed as well. Yet he stands there, completely unaffected. Yihwan's blood might be the cure to stop the infection. The idea seems impossible, but given the situation, it can't be ignored. When Sujin, already turned into an infected, bit him, his blood somehow entered her mouth. Instead of making things worse, it cured her almost instantly. Normally, a virus shouldn't be neutralized that quickly, but the results speak for themselves. If this theory holds, it would also explain why the infected never attacked him. It's not just immunity. His blood itself acts as a vaccine. Even the smallest amount is enough to reverse the infection. This means Yihwan isn't just resistant to the virus. He might be the only person capable of stopping it. His blood could hold the cure the world desperately needs. If the infected can really be cured, then his parents weren't completely gone. That means they were still human, and there was a chance to save them. This thought is shocking, and Yihwan starts to rethink everything he has done. Since waking up and even while traveling here, he has defeated so many infected without stopping to think. Moreover, the thought hits him that he wasn't just trying to survive, but he had been ending lives that might have been saved. Gidu reminds him that he keeps many others safe, and there is no other way. Surviving means making tough choices, no matter how difficult they are. Since everything begins, they meet all kinds of people. Some are worse than the infected. Not every monster is a zombie. Some are humans who lose their kindness, proving that the real danger is not just the virus, but people themselves. No one can judge Yihwan for his actions because he never harms anyone. If anything, he protects them. Rather than just discussing, they decide to confirm the truth. A suggestion comes up to test what Yihwan has become, and the best way to do this is by making his presence known. They plan to feature him on the radio broadcast that night. This will reveal whether he truly holds the key to a cure or if something else lies beneath his existence. Yihwan feels unsure about the idea of being on a live radio broadcast. The thought of speaking to so many people makes him hesitate. Later, he connects with Gina on a video call and explains his situation, how they want him to talk on radio. He fears he isn't as special as they believe and worries about raising false hope. However, Gina assures him, in this world, no one is more remarkable than him. Afterward, she suggests to him that Yihwan's sister might be listening to the broadcast, encouraging him to do his best. He appreciates the support and thanks them. Realizing he needs to save his battery, he promises to talk later, but before hanging up, he asks Gina to send his regards to her parents. After the call, Sujin teases him, asking if that was his girlfriend, to which he quickly denies it, but the other person isn't convinced, pointing out that she sounded like she thinks he's really special. Afterward, Gidu joins in, making him even more embarrassed, and teases Yihwan, saying even Gina's parents already believe they're a couple, so there's no point in denying it. Sun Jinchul asks if Yuan got some rest, mentioning that everything is set up and it's time to prepare, but Yuan hesitates, worried about messing up during the live broadcast. Sir reassures him, laughing, saying mistakes don't really matter in times like these. Afterwards, the radio host, Sun Jinchul, begins the broadcast, acknowledging the many messages of support and concern from listeners. Despite the scarcity of data and electricity, people still take the time to reach out, and he expresses gratitude for their kindness. To give back, he announces a special guest, the first ever on the show. He introduces the person everyone has been most curious about, the one who has given people hope in these dark times. The mysterious figure known as the Motorcycle Man, Kang Yihwan, is finally on air. Afterwards, the radio host asks Kang Yihwan to introduce himself to the listeners. Yihwan is nervous but determined. He hesitates before speaking. He states his name and age, revealing that he works as a funeral mortician. Moreover, the host then mentions that many reports about Yihwan have been received, and while some details need verification, one question stands out as the most important. He asks if it is true that the infected do not attack him. After a brief pause, Yuan confirms that the reports are indeed true, and explains that the infected neither bite nor attack him. They barely acknowledge his presence. Afterward, the host admits that it sounds unbelievable and that he struggled to accept it at first. However, after witnessing it himself multiple times, he can no longer deny the truth. The host then mentions reports suggesting Yihwan has been traveling east and asks if he has a specific destination. Yihwan confirms that he does. He is heading to Yangyang in Gangwon province, where his family is located, hoping to reunite with them despite the dangers along the way. Afterwards, the host acknowledges that Yangyang is quite far and wonders if any listeners are there. Suddenly, a report comes in from a listener in Socho, a nearby area. The unexpected message catches everyone's attention. The host reveals that the listener also evacuated from Yangyang to Sokcho. According to them, the military has already passed through Yangyang, leaving nothing behind. Yiwan processes the news, realizing that his journey might have been for nothing, and that his family's fate remains uncertain. Yihuan is trying to process the possibility that Yangyang might be completely gone. Gidu, just as alarmed, questions whether the military actually destroyed the entire area. Afterwards, the host steps in to provide clarification, explaining that according to available reports, the military did take action in Yangyang. However, the phrase "nothing left" is unclear. It could mean there are no survivors, or it might only refer to the infected being eliminated. The uncertainty leaves Yihuan anxious, unsure if his family is still alive or if he has been chasing a lost cause. Afterwards, the host emphasizes the need to verify the claims before making any assumptions. Any additional details about the situation in Yangyang would help clarify what really happened. The producer confirms that the military acted when the crisis first broke out, immediately declaring martial law. However, after that initial response, their movements have been limited. In fact, reports suggest they are quickly withdrawing from metropolitan areas, leading to traffic restrictions and even more disorder. Yet, Yangyang's case might be different, suggesting something unusual happened there compared to the rest of the country. The host suggests that the military might have evacuated the survivors in Yangyang, placing them in a safer situation. Moreover, he encourages Yihuan to hold on to hope. Afterwards, Yuan reflects on his sister's love for the radio. Since childhood, they always listened together, finding comfort in its presence. She believed it made their quiet home feel more alive and less lonely. If she is safe, there's no doubt she is listening to this broadcast right now, just as she always did before everything changed. Yihuan remains determined, stating that no matter what has happened to Yangyang, it doesn't change his goal, and he is going there to find his sister. Moreover, if she is listening to the broadcast, he wants her to stay strong and hold on a little longer, and promises that he will come for her, no matter what. The host acknowledges Yuan's resolve and thanks him for his efforts. The host shares that many listeners have sent supportive messages, thanking Yuan for giving them courage. Afterwards, Gidu teases him and says he was nervous at first, but adjusted quickly, joking that he might have chosen the wrong career. Yihwan quickly denies it, to which Gidu advises him to get used to broadcasting because, once things settle, the media will want to interview him. He might even become a global star. Afterwards, the lady hesitates before asking a question, but the host encourages her to speak. She wonders why he didn't mention her cure during the broadcast, believing it could have given listeners hope. The host admits he left it out for Yuan's sake. If people knew his blood could heal the infected, they might just see him as a hero or a savior. While that sounds ideal, things might not be so simple because the weight of such a thing could bring unexpected consequences, ones Yihwan might not be ready to face. Moreover, the host explains that if the truth about Yihwan's blood spreads, he might not be seen as just a hero, but as a resource. Under the guise of helping humanity, he could end up as nothing more than a test subject. Another person agrees, acknowledging the possibility and urging Yihwan to keep it a secret. With the current situation, trusting the military or the government isn't an option. The priority should be rescuing his sister. Yuan understands and decides to check the broadcasting station more thoroughly. Before he leaves, Gidu hands him a cleaned weapon. Afterwards, Yuan hesitates, wondering if he really needs to take the weapon for a quick look, but Gidu insists, saying he should take it just in case. He understands Yuan's feelings but warns him not to lower his guard. The more he does, the more vulnerable he becomes. Right now, he has every right to be selfish until he saves his sister. Yuan takes the advice to heart and thanks him before heading out, determined to continue his search. Gidu is surprised by the statement because he explains that Yuan is kind but lacks strong determination. At just 28, he still has many challenges ahead. While his kindness is a strength, it can also be a weakness in a world like this. Moreover, a gentle heart can break long before the body does. That's why Gidu's presence is so important. Every time Yuan starts to lose hope, Gidu is the one who helps him keep going. Afterwards, the host agrees that Yuan only grows stronger because of the support around him. Without help, reaching Yang would be impossible, to which Gidu doesn't hesitate to say that he will assist Yuan, not just because he is an important story, but also because he once helped him. Sujin nearby hesitates before speaking. Gidu confirms that he is traveling with Yuan, to which the lady expresses her interest in joining. Gidu wasn't expecting this request and feels surprised by the sudden decision. Afterwards, Gidu hesitates for a moment before addressing Sujin's request. Traveling together isn't a simple decision, and he wonders if she has any personal connection to Yang, to which Sujin explains that she was shocked when she heard about Yang's situation on the radio. The military unit that moved through the area isn't just any group to her. Her father is the commander of the 4th Armored Brigade stationed there. Before proceeding further into the story, let's take a glimpse into our boy's past. There, we see an elderly woman who goes by the name Elle. Right now, she feels guilty about accepting help and money Yuan's sister is willing to offer. But Yuan's sister gently reassures her that it's no burden, just a little kindness. She hopes this woman wholeheartedly has a nice meal with her grandkids, and skipping meals isn't an option. Elle thanks her endlessly for this. A few moments later, given her struggles to pay for lunch, Yuan asks his sister why she gave the money away. She just brushes it off, saying she's got enough cash to buy an old lady lunch. She also mentions Elle climbs this hill every week or so to pick up trash and papers, even though it's kind of pointless, but she does it anyway. That's what she calls a sense of true, unseen goodwill, the mere reasons that hold humanity together. This leads her to dream that one day Yuan will carry the same goodwill forward, so she asks if he will. Ending the trip to memory lane, alone, on a bench, lost in thoughts of the past, he stares at his last messages to big sister Li Che with unwinding sadness. Later on, Gidu tends to ask if Miss Sujin's father is the deputy commander of the 4th Armored Brigade. Sujin reveals that he is Colonel Choi Yunchul, previously stationed in Cheorwan, but reassigned to Yangyang last year. Also, her family moved to Yangyang, but she stayed in Seoul for work. Gidu considers that her whole world flipped upside down in just a week with no prior notice. Plus, he thinks this woman feels a sense of safety with Yuan and probably desires to come along with them. Just then, his mind did a U-turn. Colonel Choi Youngcheol, the name's quite familiar, and he served in Cheorwan until last year. Something clicks in his mind. Meanwhile, Jinchul thinks about letting Sujin tag along, which isn't so bad. Considering the military taking control over Yangyang, he believes that it's likely to be the 4th Armored Brigade unit, and that unit is definitely gatekeeping that area, no civilians allowed. But in Ms. Sujin's case, this civilian has direct links to the executive family of the deputy commander, which makes it a whole different story. Not only that, Jinchul concludes that there isn't any safe place but the military base in moments like these. Even knowing their path to Yangyang isn't a piece of cake. It requires immense planning to get past the pack of the infected. It could take longer than expected. However, the option to leave still sounds better than staying behind and doing nothing. Sujin breaks the silence, expressing her desire to reunite with her family. Thus they decide to discuss the matters further once Yihwan returns. Moving on, Yuan hears out Sujin's case, asking if she is coming with them. He doesn't have any problem with her tagging along, knowing her family is in Yangyang. Gidu hit Yihwan with a reality check, telling the dude that they weren't going to Yangyang for vacation. Gulping down rice balls, Yuan knows the risks are real, but in times like these, family comes first, no doubt. Also, he casually mentions traveling to Yangyang because of his sister. That's something Sujin finds relatable, hoping not to be a burden for them further along. So they ask Jinchul what's next. He says now that he's got some hope, he's going to keep broadcasting from here. With that in mind, he asks them if they can share any info they pick up on the way to Yangyang. Furthermore, Jinchul mentions getting reports from all over the country, but intel on military bases is rare. Plus, barely anyone is making long-distance trips like they are. Jinchul points out that places like Seoul and the metro area are basically shut down. He figures if the military or government is still up and running, they've probably shifted their bases out to the provinces. That's why Jinchul thinks broadcasting their journey to Yangyang as a live documentary would mean a lot to his surviving listeners. He hopes Yuan can rescue his sister and reunite with her. Meanwhile, he plans to stay put and do his part. Yuan gives him a small smile, promising to return for him. Afterward, Guido restocks Jinchul's food supply for at least a month. Jinchul worries it's risky to give away their supplies before heading to Yangyang, but Guido reassures him they'll hit a supermarket to restock. Plus, Yuan confirms the 8th floor is clear of zombies, so they're not trapped anymore. Jinchul thanks Yuan for saving him in more ways than one. He dreams of the day they can broadcast together again, and the next time with his sister too. Putting their hands together in a huddle, they wish each other good luck before parting ways. After that, Jinchul watches the trio walk away, leaving him with nothing but hope. Once our boy and his friends are out, he fires up his motorbike, leading the way as Gidu and Sujin settle into the car. With engines roaring, they hit the road at full speed, Gidu keeping close behind, following Yihwan's lead. He vows to bring Li Che back this time. With the door jammed by the pile of junk, Li Che's daughter sleeps peacefully. She softly tells her to hang in there a bit longer, telling her that Uncle Yihwan is coming to get them soon. Meanwhile, our trio's journey hits a snag when they find the highway completely jam-packed with the wreckage of abandoned cars. Even if they try, they can't even squeeze the bike through all the junk blocking their way. Gidu had already expected that their journey to Yangyang wouldn't be a walk in the park, but he hadn't accounted for this much shit. As far as he's concerned, they might have to take a much longer detour than he initially thought. Sujin takes a look at the map in her hand and suggests taking Route 86. She's confident they won't encounter this level of wreckage there. Gidu finds her idea doable, so he quickly updates Yihwan about the national road they're about to take. But it seems like Yuan's mind is already occupied with troubling thoughts. The sight of a family lying dead in front of him makes his heart sink, but he shakes off the feeling and responds to his friend. A while later, they arrive at Namyangju Station. There, they encounter a few zombies, which the trio easily takes down with their combined efforts. Afterward, they sit back to prepare some food. Just like that, night falls, and they take shelter in their car. Yuan stares at his phone. He's already sent countless texts to his sister, but there's still no response. Morning arrives, and the path they were following leads to a dead end. There are plenty of roads they could take, but finding one that actually leads to Yangyang is a whole different problem. Filtering out a safer route is even trickier. Eventually, they decide to take a short break here before moving on. The place is pretty secluded and peaceful, so it shouldn't be too risky. After all, they've been exhausting themselves trying to figure out the safest route. A little breather to recharge is well-deserved. Sujin takes this opportunity to head into the thick woods to do her business. As she disappears into the greenery, Gidu isn't sure if she should be roaming around like this. Then again, they can't exactly follow her either. All they can do is hope she stays safe since the direction she took only leads to an abandoned mountain. Still, it can't be easy for a woman to keep up with them, especially since they've been rushing ahead without rest or time to regroup. She must be exhausted trying to make sure she's not slowing them down. It looks like she's indeed drained from being the only woman tagging along with the boys. But at the end of the day, she can't complain since she was the one who insisted on coming along. If only he could ask Yuan to stand guard while she does her thing, but that's not an option. Her worst fear comes true when a guy, fully equipped from head to toe, suddenly stands behind her, barrel pointed right at her. Her scream echoes through the forest, so loud that Gidu and Yuan immediately go on high alert. Yuan doesn't hesitate for even a second and bolts like a flash toward the source of that distressing scream. As he shouts her name expecting her to respond, he stumbles upon the same soldier-looking guy who has Sujin terrified. The dude demands that Yuan drop his weapon. Since there's no room for risks, our boy drops his bat without a second thought. The soldier then questions Yuan about his identity and the reason for their presence here. Yihuan, on the other hand, is also trying to figure out who this guy is. It's obvious he's a survivor, but something feels off. Where did he even get that gun? He doesn't seem like a legit military guy. Not wanting to risk Sujin's life, Yihuan simply raises his hands in the air and tells the guy that she's his partner. The only reason he's here is that he followed her scream. The fake soldier then demands to know why Yihuan and his friend are in the mountains, since there's absolutely nothing out here. Yihuan, deciding to be honest, explains their mission, which is to reach Yang Yang and find his family. But he and his friends got lost. Unintentionally, they ended up wandering around all day and stopped here to take a breather. Not to mention, the place looked harmless, so they had no reason to move on without getting some proper rest. Finally, the fake soldier lowers his gun and apologizes for causing a panic. He acknowledges that it was rude of him to act that way. He had sensed movement in an empty mountain and mistook them for infected. He then helps the distressed Sujin get back on her feet. At last, he pulls off his helmet and introduces himself, Jang Taehun. As a gesture of goodwill, he apologizes once again for scaring them. Yihuan, in turn, returns the polite gesture by introducing himself. It looks like Gidu has also arrived in the area, as they can clearly hear him calling Yihuan out. Hearing another person approach, Jang Taehun immediately asks how many of them there are. Yihuan flashes 3 fingers in response. Jang Taehun then suddenly invites them to come with him, seeing how exhausted they are. The place he's currently staying at isn't exactly comfortable, but it's still better than sleeping outside. If nothing else, there are plenty of extra rooms to accommodate everyone.